Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Debbie and I finished another book. Admittedly, it wasn't my favourite, but I'm still going to talk about it because, you know, this is about sharing my opinions, and there might be other people who share my opinions. Obviously there are also others who don't, but I just want to be honest about my relationship with this book. And the book is FranKissStein by Jeanette Winterson. So, I'm not sure if you can see that. There you go. I'll read you the blurb and then I'll tell you about my relationship with this book. In Brexit Britain, a young transgender doctor called Rye is falling in love, against their better judgment, with Victor Stein, a celebrated professor leading the public debate around AI. Meanwhile, Ron Lord, just divorced and living with mum again, is set to make his fortune launching a new generation of sex dolls for lonely men everywhere. Across the Atlantic in Phoenix, Arizona, a cryonics facility houses dozens of bodies of men and women who are medically and legally dead, but waiting to return to life. But the scene is set in 1816, when 19-year-old Mary Shelley writes a story about creating a non-biological life form. Beware, for I am fearless and therefore powerful. What will happen when Homo sapiens is no longer the smartest being on the planet? Now, it's 352 pages, and it's in contemporary fiction, horror, literary fiction, romance, contemporary, fantasy, science fiction, historical, supernatural fiction, and ghost stories. I don't quite know where to start with my relationship with this book. Yeah, I just wasn't the biggest fan of it. I think it mainly stems from the way it's written, because it's not written in a conventional sense. I'd say it's closer to like how a teenager or a young person might write a diary with lots of he said this and she said that. There's no quotation marks around dialogue, so it kind of took a while for me to get used to that. When you first meet Rye, it's spelled out very quickly that his dead name is Mary and that he isn't completely transitioned yet. So he's had the top surgery, but he hasn't had the bottom surgery. That feels weird to say it like that, but it's essentially what it is. Nearly every other sentence for Rye just felt like I was just being told he was trans again, and it's just like, it seems really unnecessary to keep saying that to me when I already know. A story about Ron Lord with his sex dolls. I mean, there were parts of that story that I kind of liked, parts of it that I didn't. The way that the character uses religion to defend his business is kind of interesting. I'm just going to put a warning out now that within the LGBT themes of the book, there's quite a graphic rape. I won't say there's a lot of talk about this subject, but there are a couple of appearances in the book of looking at the Catholic Church and sexual abuse. I'll just say that. So if anything like that is a trigger for you, I do not recommend this book at all. I think because I just finished it about 20 minutes ago, so I'm still kind of processing what I read, and to be honest, some of it I still don't completely understand. It was almost like I almost glazed over some of it, I don't know. But yeah, it just wasn't my favourite. There were certain parts of it where I just thought, could this be considered offensive, the way this has been written? I admit I haven't really read much on kind of the response to it, but it does say here that it was longlisted for the Booker Prize in 2019. And to be honest, I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just not for me. I'm sure there'll be people out there who identify with Rye and what Rye goes through and kind of his journey throughout the book. I mean, when I think about The Good Thing, I definitely think that I preferred the story of Mary Shelley writing the book in the past. It's still written in the same way that the modern bits are done, which at times made it really difficult, especially when there's names repeated across the history of it. So you've got the names like Mary and Shelley and Claire and Victor in both timelines. Certain chapters, it took me a little bit longer to just figure out which timeline we were supposed to be in. It was interesting. It's definitely an interesting concept. The thing that made me download the book in the first place was the idea of it being a modern day FranKissStein. I just noticed that inside the eye of Stein on the cover, it actually says a love story. Would I call it a love story? I'm not really sure. I'm just conflicted on this one. As you can probably tell. Just got my chamomile tea because I've got in from work at 7:30 tonight and it's currently 9:45. But it claims to be 352 pages. But I swear the actual book was actually slightly shorter than that. And it didn't take me that long to read. I think I read it over a couple of hours, over 3 nights. Yeah. Interesting concept. I'm just not sure of the execution of it. And I think maybe it's just not for me. And I'm sure there'll be other people who actually enjoy this book and like what it represents and are able to identify with certain characters. For me, I couldn't really identify with anyone. Maybe that's the point. Because I don't like that I hated the main character, right? It's just, I think just with the way it's written and the way that it's all broken up, because it is broken up quite a lot, and the fact that it takes you a second to figure out where you are in the story, it just made it very jumpy. With the modern story, when you've got Rye falling in love with Victor Stein, and when you've got that whole story going on, and you're talking about like the cryogenics and stuff, and you know, there's a point when you're seeing the relationship between Rye and Victor, and there's a certain point in the story when you just think, is Victor really manipulating Rye? Yeah, it's just, I think there's just a lot of unlikable characters in this book, and the way that it was written just wasn't helpful. I've never read a book in this style before, and I know there's other books that have been written in this style more recently. I'm definitely aware of that. I'm just not a fan of it. And I'm sure there's plenty of other people who might actually prefer this style of writing. But I think because I've never read anything like it before, and it took me so long to kind of figure out what was going on and, you know, how it had all been broken up and everything. Yeah, it just wasn't my favourite. Obviously, I'm not trying to put people off reading it. I want people to go in with an open mind, and maybe they'll find different things that they'll like and maybe other things that they dislike. I didn't hate it. As I said, you know, there were certain parts of it that I thought were quite interesting. Because I'll admit, the trans side of it, you know, I mean, I like to think of myself as an ally, and I'd hope that obviously if I did ever say anything offensive, somebody would call me out on it. There were certain points when I really did feel sorry for Rye and what Rye was going through, especially when it came to that bit of the sexual assault where Rye's raped. As I mentioned earlier in the video, there is a bit where Rye is raped. In the moment that it's happening, or just before it happens, Rye says, I'm either going to be beaten up or I'm going to be raped. And then after it happens, he says, wasn't the first time and it wasn't the last time. I think there's a lot of question in my mind of whether that rape actually needed to be there, but then again, at the same time, I think some people, that might be their only kind of wake-up call to it, to the abuse that Rye goes through, because it is quite graphic. But yeah, as I said, if that is going to be a trigger for you, please, it's not worth it to put yourself through that. But yeah, I don't want to put anybody off this book. This was just my thoughts. Obviously, my issues were nothing to do with the transgender storyline. It was just the way it was written. It was, as I said, you know, it felt like I was reading a teenager's diary where they're saying, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that. There's no quotation marks. A lot of, like, sentences kind of run on from each other. And for somebody who's used to just the conventional writing of a book, it just took a long time for my brain to process what was happening. You never know, I might read another book in this style and find that it's not the way it was written so much, it wasn't my favourite story. I don't know. I preferred the 19-year-old Mary Shelley storyline the best, I think, out of all of it. And there were interesting things in the modern side of it, and I did find Ron's storyline with the sex bots. Have I mentioned the sex bots yet? He names the sex dolls, so you can say, oh, so if you're looking for a Claire, or oh, if you're looking for Sophie, or whatever. Apologies to anybody called Claire or Sophie who was watching this. Yeah, there were elements of Ron's storyline which were kind of funny. But he was actually using religion to defend his business, and he was just like saying, yeah, so, you know, this is for the lonely men, you know, they don't have to go out and cheat on their wives. When you're looking at the, like, sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, it was just like, wouldn't it be better if they had sex bots so the kids weren't touched and stuff? It was like, it's all very kind of on the edge. Editing Debbie here. Just to let you know, that isn't just completely out of left field. It is actually a line in the book
Just putting that warning out there for you, okay?
It wasn't my favourite. There were elements of it that I liked, though. It just wasn't for me. But I'll show you the front of the book again. It's FranKissStein, A Love Story by Jeanette Winterson, and this is the front cover of the book. Again, please don't be put off by my review. This is just what I thought of it as I was reading it. You know, other people have a completely different opinion. This is just my opinion. As with this book review, there was a point I was umming and ahhing over whether I actually wanted to talk about it, but I just thought, you know, everyone has books that they read and they don't like, and it would be a bit stupid of me to not talk about it when it's a book that I've read just because I didn't like it. And I think by talking about the book, it helps you figure out the bits that you did like and try and figure out where it went wrong. I don't know. Yeah, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do book reviews on the regular because I read a lot. I also sing a lot, and I'm currently binge watching American Horror Story. So I've been starting to put together videos of each season of American Horror Story and my thoughts on it. So yeah, if that sounds like your cup of tea, please click subscribe. I upload every single Wednesday on the morning, British time. I'm very tired, so I'm going to finish my chamomile tea and go to bed because I'm at work at 9:30 tomorrow morning, and it's just coming up to 10 o'clock, so I need to go to bed. But yeah, so good night from me, and I'll see you next week with another video. Stay safe, everybody.